Please come here. This is good space. Okay, this side, this side. Sit beside this space.
Can I sit here? Wait, so you're not going. You're going? You're going?
It's streaming right now, right? Just make sure انا شفت لما دخلت بس سمعتهم بيلعبوا هناك.
At 1. Yeah, no, I have 5 days. Monday, I woke up, sorry.
محتاج set up a projector.
Sorry. Saturday, I woke up Thursday. Don't worry, I asked him.
You're coming here to take, not to help put it right. Daniel, can I borrow a table? Can I borrow this table? I'll get another one, it's okay. Is this a big table or a small table? It's a big table. Can somebody help me find the table? I had a jacket on me.
لا سيبي رالي. دي شغلانة.
محتاج حد
You guys, do you want to come on November 1st to review and then play? Yeah? You guys, do you want to come on November 1st to review and then play? Okay, I'll send on the group and let me know.
Guys, while I'm setting up, can we pray? ارفع عن الصلاة. نقول أبانا الذي بسرعة. نقول أبانا الذي بسرعة كجروب for me.
Thank you.
Is it
sir.
working? No, it's okay. They didn't miss much. Okay. So the second point, the moral of the story, is if you love the Lord, it's through feeding His sheep, it's through serving. So the thesis that I want to try to take from in this talk is this: service is love of God in action, right? So this is very important, because whatever motivation that we have in the service, we have to have the right motivation. We can't just, do things just haphazardly, right? We have to have the right goal. So the goal is the love of God. And the way we express the love of God is through service. It's through helping people. It's through cleaning the church, whatever, right? So it's the love of God in action. Another kind of mental image I want to throw out there, right? Service is like painting, right? If you have a clear image of the love of God in your heart, in your head, you can paint a really clear picture. But if you don't have it clear in your head, you're not going to be able to paint a good picture, right? So the first thing to do is to know God in your life, right? Because that's how you can express God to other people. When people see that painting, the intended outcome is saying, look, I want that thing in my life, right? That's how what service is about, right? It's about people seeing God's work in your life, right? And then after that, they will want that love in their own life, right? So service is, again, the love of God in action, right? So what is the goal of the service? So let's look first what it is not. Right? Let me give you an example. Say you're preparing a convention, and then this is the thought process that's going in your head. Oh, there's this awesome priest, XYZ, right? And has a lot of YouTube followers, and he's a great speaker, and he's a great, whatever. And you're so enamored.
Sorry,
What, you want another slide? I haven't gotten there yet.
Oh.
Right? Now you cut the thoughts in my... Okay. What was I saying? Okay, yeah. So you're thinking about this how you're gonna make the convention the best that it can be, right? And that's full stop. Is that enough? Right? If all you're thinking is directed towards how you're gonna make it such a great event, and how you're going to have the best priest there, and how you're going to have the best technological marvel happening, right, with lights and show and stuff it's not about putting on a show, right? It's about getting closer and coming into a relationship with God. So that's the goal of the service. It's not about the details about how you can make something very cool and how you can make something awesome and people are going to be talking about it for 5 days after and stuff like that. It's not about that, right? It's about having a relationship with God. Is about doing the thing that's going to make everybody get closer to God. And sometimes simpler is better, right? Sometimes it's not about making something very complicated, something simple that can serve the people in a good way. So it's about knowing who you're going to serve. It's about knowing what's best for everyone, and so on, right? Okay, so that's the goal of the service. It's about bringing everyone in a relationship with God. All right, the second thing is the commandment, right? So let's read this together here. Right, so this is from the mouth of the Lord himself, right? He said, so when they had eaten breakfast, Jesus said to Simon Peter, I read that already, never mind. You're right, you're right, okay. All right, so the commandment. As the Father loved me, I also loved you. Abide in my love. If you keep my commandment, you will abide in my love, just as I have kept my Father's commandment and abide in his love. These things I have spoken to you, that my joy may remain in you, and that your joy may be full. This is my commandment, that you love one another as I have loved you. Right, so that's what we're saying. The service is the love of God in action. Right? So this is the commandment. God is directing all of us to serve, but to serve him and not to serve people. It's not to serve ourselves. It's not to serve, for show. It's to serve him directly, right? So if this is the commandment, what's the warning, right? The warning is this: not everyone who says to me, Lord, Lord, shall enter the kingdom of heaven, but he who does the will of my Father in heaven. And what's the will of his Father in heaven? To love one another, right? Many will say to me in that day, Lord, Lord, have we not prophesied in your name, cast out demons in your name, and done many wonders in your name? And then I will declare to them, I never knew you, depart from me, you who practice lawlessness. Remember, lawlessness, this is a key word we're going to get back to a little bit later, right? The point here is, the commandment of God is to serve him, to love him, and to reflect that love through service. And the warning is, if we don't do that, then whatever we do doesn't really matter, right? So this is a serious thing. We have to have the right motivation. It's not about just serving for the sake of serving or for filling out our time or whatever, right? So let's say now that we know Sounds good. I think they should have. Right, so by isolating you, he's going to take away any type of reinforcement you can get, right? You're not going to be able to, like, say for example, you're going down the wrong road. You're starting to make some mistakes. If you don't have a father of confession, or if you don't have a spiritual advisor, right? You're not going to be able to know what you're doing wrong. Sometimes we can't know, like, we don't have the enough insight in our actions to know if we're going down the wrong road. So by isolating you, you start slipping. First is going to be, you know how when you have a hill and you start slipping down that hill, at the beginning you slip slowly, but then you start gaining momentum, and it becomes, before you know it, you're like zooming down, right? It's sort of like, what do you call it? Snowboarding or something, right? So it's very important not to isolate yourself. Have time with your peers. Right? Have an open mind. Listen to what other people are saying. Have a spiritual advisor. Have a father of confession. Whatever works for you. Make sure you don't isolate yourself. Right? The third type of war that he's going to do is attrition warfare. So attrition warfare, if he succeeds in isolating you, then he's going to start, you know, like death by a million paper cuts. Right? He's going to, you know, make you do something wrong here, make you be annoying to that person, make you do whatever, right? And because you're isolated, nobody is giving you any sort of feedback, so you start making mistakes and moving on, right? So if those are the three like types of strategies the enemy that uses, then we have to diagnose when we're starting to fall for one of those, right? When you're a doctor, you need to recognize symptoms of your problems, right? And all of us in our spiritual life, we have to recognize symptoms in our own, like symptoms of falling in our own life, right? So there are a few symptoms I came up with. I'm gonna sort of try to go through them quickly, right? I'm gonna start by looking at the symptoms inwardly first, and then I'm gonna look at the symptoms outwardly, right? So if I'm gonna look at myself first, right? The first thing that I'm gonna have to look at is lack of spiritual law in my personal life. If I don't have a spiritual law in my personal life, if I don't have a set time with the Bible, if I don't have a routine of prayer, if I don't come to liturgy and take communion, if I'm a servant and don't come to servants meeting, right? I have no, like, I can't serve without being served, right? We're all together here because we're being served and we're serving at the same time, right? It's not a one-way street. So lack of a law, like, this is one big symptom. If I don't have a set spiritual time in my life, then I should really start looking and stepping back and saying, okay, there might be something wrong, right? That's the first symptom. The second symptom, right, is the prevalence of routine sins in our lives, right? When I am away from God, there are lots of little sins that might seem routine that I practice without really thinking about it too much, right? If I am, I don't know, swearing, or if I am smoking, or if I act one way outside and act a different way inside the church, right? This is another symptom that we're not on the right path, right? So we have to think about that. Is there sins that are bothering me, right? Because God, right, if we insist on going down that road and we ignore God's call back for us, then we're going to suffer in the long run, right? It might not, we're going to be like when Jesus talks about the hypocrites, like the Pharisees, he says they're full of all hypocrisy and lawlessness. When I talk about lawlessness, remember I pointed out the bold word lawlessness, right? We have no law in our life. We have no spiritual law in our life, right? We have to have a spiritual law in our life. You have to set it for yourself, or you have to like sit with your father of confession and set it set it together, right? It's very important. So that's the third sort of symptom that we can look out for, right? Now I'm going to start going outside a little bit, right? So we've all been serving. Remember the thought experiment? We've been serving for a few years, right? One of the symptoms of, we're not going down the right way is being too busy in the service. I'm spending so much time in that meeting. I'm spending that much time going to preparing this convention. I'm doing this, I'm doing that. I'm doing so many things, but I'm not doing anything for myself, for my own spiritual growth, right? What's the point of all this, right? I don't go to God to get any sort of nourishment, right? So if I find myself being too busy in the service and at the same time not actually growing myself spiritually, then that's another symptom that maybe something is not 100% right. Are you guys following so far? Yes? No? Okay. Another thing is ownership in the service. So this is something maybe you guys haven't really ran into too often, right? But if you've been serving for a while, sometimes we start feeling that this is my service, those are my kids, nobody should talk to them except they go through me first, right? If I start thinking that way, then there's something not 100% right. You don't own those people, right? You're serving them. You're actually, you're underneath them. So you're supposed to look for the best thing for them. So if the best thing for them is maybe someone else can serve them, then why not, right? So this ownership of this in the service, although it can be good in some aspects, like, I work hard and I try to do the best that I can, it's great. But if it goes too far, then it becomes negative, right? Everything we talk about, there's a balance, right? Ownership in the service, being like taking ownership and being committed is a great thing. But if you go beyond it and you start having that feeling that, oh my God, everything has to go through me or else nothing is gonna happen, then that's when it starts turning the other way, right? Other things about, like if for example you're serving and then you start rejecting, like somebody can give you an idea, hey Jumana, I have a good idea for your Sunday school class, why don't you do this and this and this? And you in your head start thinking, who's that guy? Why is he telling me what to do? It's my service. He shouldn't be concerned with this stuff. It's not his position to tell me whatever. When you start thinking that way, maybe something is wrong, right? So it's very important to be open-minded, to accept other people's ideas. I'm not saying implement everything, but be open, receptive to other people's input, right? Okay, so this is another, if you have the wrong type of ownership in the service, then it's another symptom that something is not going right. Okay, another big thing, bickering, contention, and hate, right? You guys know what bickering, contention, and hate is, right? Start asking yourself, am I in continuous contentions with others, right? Do I really dislike so-and-so and can get along with so-and-so and just hate that guy's guts, right? If I am in continuous hate, or if I'm in a position where I'm so annoyed with so many people that I'm serving with, or with kids that I serve, or with not kids, but people that I serve, right? Then what's wrong? Why? This is completely the opposite, right, of what God says. God says, peace I live with you, my peace I give to you, not as the world gives to you do I give. Let not your heart be troubled, neither let it be afraid. So if you don't have the peace of God in your heart, then there's something wrong, right? Why is my life so contentious? Why is anybody giving me any sort of opinion or talking to me makes me stay up at night and be annoyed and not sleep well and stuff like that? Why, right? Something is wrong. If I go down that road, if I feel that I am bickering with people, if I feel that I'm in contention with other people, if I feel that I hate someone so much I can't look at him in the face, then maybe I don't have a spiritual law in my life. Maybe I should take a step back and think, I should correct myself from the inside first, right? So this is another sort of symptom. If I see it in my life, then maybe something is not going very right, in the right direction. Another symptom is judging, right? When you start somebody, like you're serving with like 2 or 3 other people in your class, right? And one of them gets up and starts speaking. And right away when he stands up, you have this thought in your head, not that guy again. He doesn't know what he's talking about. He always says the same thing. He always repeats like himself. He doesn't know what he's talking about. If you start thinking that way about people, right? Again, it's a red light. Why am I thinking that way? Why do I feel that I can that I'm better than him? Why do I feel that I have to keep adding on points and keep adding like additions to the lesson that he's giving all the time? This is a real problem, right? Like I'm not telling you this because it doesn't happen. It does happen, right? Say there are a few people in class and one person is giving the lesson and then another servant keeps popping in every 2 minutes and, interrupting and adding points and stuff like that. Why, right? Doesn't make sense. Why is that happening, right? I'm not saying, again, I'm not throwing judgment. Guys, don't understand me. I'm not judging people. I'm saying if I do that, I'm talking about myself. If I am the one who does that, I have to ask myself, why do I do that, right? Why do I feel the need to, override that person in front of me? Why? Is it that I think I'm so much better than him? Is it that I think that the Holy Spirit is not working through him, but it's working through me, right? These are thoughts that have to be a red light. It's a flag that goes in your head. Something is wrong. I should watch out. Okay. The next thing is respect of persons. This is actually something that I found when I first read the Bible. I read it in King James Version, so it's the Old English, right? And in New King James Version, they use partiality, but I like respect of persons a little bit better. Respect of persons is when you respect someone over another because of his status, because of his position in wherever, church or something, right? If I have respect of persons, it's a big problem. Why? This is something I want to hit on a little bit, right? Let's look at a couple of verses that from the Old Testament and the New Testament. Listen to this carefully. He says, Hear the cases between your brethren, and judge righteously between a man and his brother, or the stranger who is with him. You shall not show partiality. You shall not show respect of person in judgments. You shall hear the small as well as the great. You shall not be afraid in any man's presence, for the judgment is God's. So God is very gung-ho about justice, about mercy, about not respecting persons, right? God is very strong for that, right? Look at what the New Testament says. My brethren, have not the faith of our Lord Jesus Christ, the Lord of glory, with respect of persons. So don't say, oh, I'm going to preach to those guys because those guys are cool and nice and I like them, and I'm not going to preach to those guys because they're boring and I don't like them that much, right? Don't fall into the trap of preferring people over another. I like Laura, right? I like Laura, and so I'm going to deal with her a little bit better than I deal with George. He's the one who gave me the name, right? I'm not gonna, if I start preferring one person over the other, it's gonna make people feel that they are not good enough, right? I don't know if you guys ever ran into this before. I did. When I see somebody that I respect, prefer someone over me for no good reason, I'm gonna think of myself, well, what did I do wrong, right? Why is he treating me like this? Moreover, if you're a servant, people are going to look at you and they're going to say, this guy is a servant. He's supposed to represent God. So if he doesn't like me, maybe God doesn't like me, right? So see how this can snowball into a big problem? If you start preferring one person over another, you might lead someone to think that God doesn't love them, right? that's a big problem. So be very careful. Like in the Old Testament, it says, I don't want to read, okay, the verses are going to be there. I feel like if I start reading the verses, I'm going to lose you guys. Take it, the verse, read the points. The verse is very clear in what it says, right? Don't have respect of persons. Don't, in your service, be just. Treat everybody equally, right? I'll tell you a personal thing. I don't usually try to get into personal relationships with people, right? I don't, like, my service is like the people that I know in the service only. I try not to have, go to people's houses after that. I don't go to, and I do that intentionally because I don't want to get into a point of having to treat someone differently from another because he's my friend or because I owe him a favor or something like that, right? So it's very important to be very clear in your service. Everybody's equal. I'm going to treat everybody the same, right? Again, everything has, two sides. Obviously, in a class that you're serving, there are going to be people that you might not like, you might get along a little bit more. It's just they might be close to your personality a little bit more than some other people. That's fine, But that doesn't mean, you give them something extra that you're not giving other people. Treat everybody equally, right? So if you're not, another red light goes on. Something is not right. All right. The next point is speaking and no action. I personally have a beef with that. There's lots of people who talk, right? And they are not in the battlefield doing something, right? If you look at God's service on earth, it was very personal, right? He wasn't serving, he wasn't on, serving from over YouTube or something like that, right? He was with the people, he was walking, he was, getting dirty. If you close your eyes and imagine Jesus Christ on earth, what do you think he would look like? He's not going to look like this handsome guy wearing very nice clothes. No, his feet are going to be cut because he's been walking for a long time. He's going to be smelling sweaty because he hasn't had a shower for 5 days or 8 days or whatever, right? He's going to be tired and he's going to be not walking straight but walking tired like this, because he's been up all day serving. That's what the Bible says about Jesus. We ought to be the same. We're not serving the word only. I'm not saying, again, everything in balance. I'm not saying giving a speech is a bad thing. No, it's good. But if it's not backed up by action, it's not totally as effective, right? We should strive to what St. Paul said. He said, "Who is weak and I'm not weak? Who is made to stumble and I do not burn with indignation," right? He cared for the people so much that if anybody suffered, he himself was suffering as well, right? So we have to put our, what's the expression? Put our money where our mouth is. What? Put our money where... Okay, something like that. Anyway. Okay. Second thing, right? All their work they do to be seen by men. So this is another thing that we should be weary of. What does God say when he speaks to the Pharisees? He says this, "But all their works they do to be seen by men. They make their phylacteries broad and enlarge the borders of their garment. They love the best places at feasts, the best seats in the synagogue, greeting in the marketplaces, and to be called by men, Rabbi, Rabbi." Right? If I serve and I feel that I want everybody to say, "Oh, good job. You did an awesome job. You know, what you're doing is nobody else before you did it," right? If I get that feeling that I want to be seen by men in everything that I do, right? If I take services that are intentionally exposed to people, right? So that people can see me and say, "Oh, look, that guy is awesome," something is not right, right? Another thing that I should ask myself, do I seek validation from people? right? Am I serving so that I feel good about myself, right? That's not very good, right? If you think about it, service is hard. If you're serving so that, people say good job, and then after that you feel, oh look, I'm feeling really good about myself. Next day somebody's gonna come and criticize you, and they're gonna get depressed, right? It's true, right? If you rely on emotions, in your life, in your service, it's not gonna get you too far. I'm almost done. The last point is legacy building, right? So this is a little bit farther ahead. Legacy building, do you know what legacy building means? Do you guys know what legacy building?
Like, oh, remember me before I die.
Exactly, right?
After I die.
Why not before you die? After I leave a service, I want everybody to know I left my mark on this service. Before I came in, there was nobody in the class. I came in, I called this people over and I called that people over, and I did this and I did that, and I made this service from scratch, right? That's called legacy building, and it's not so good, right? If I'm going into the service, right? If I'm going into the service thinking that I want to build a legacy for myself, that I want to make people remember me for how good I served, that's not the right motivation. Okay, so I'm going to conclude quickly now. Okay, so in conclusion, we said service is the love of God in action. So this is the premise of our talk today. Service is the love of God in action. This should be my first goal. Every day when I wake up in the morning and go to my service or do something, I should put this in front of me. Service is the love of God in action, right? Remember to serve the Lord, not the house of the Lord, right? You're serving God. You're not just coming in and going through the motions and doing this and this and that just so that you can, so that you can feel good about yourself, right? That's not the reason for the service. You're serving God Himself. Remember that. You should put that in your mind all the time. I have to continuously examine myself, right? I can't sit down, and serve and not grow myself spiritually. I have to have a spiritual law. So if you come out with anything from this talk, remember you have to have a spiritual law in your life. I'm not speaking to you, I'm speaking to myself, right? I have to have a spiritual law in my life, right? I can't go around living my days like on the boat, right? Like being thrown by the wind, right? I have to have a clear goal in my biblical life. I have to be reading the Bible. I have to understand. I have to set goals. I need to read that many chapters. I have to get this number of books done. I have to recall, maybe take notes or whatever works for you, right? I have to have a spiritual law. Be aware of the strategy of the enemy. So we talked about three things, right? We talked about he's going to deceive you. He's going to try to muddle the real goal of the service. He's going to try to what do you say? Huh? He's going to try to isolate you, and then he's going to try to do attrition war and try to beat you up with and defeat you with a million paper cuts kind of thing, right? We have to examine my personal life and my service. We talked about that, right? I have to look into my life, and we talked about a bunch of different symptoms in that should flag a red light if I start noticing them in my service, right? If in my service I see any of those red lights, I should stop and think, am I doing something wrong? Maybe I should go back. Maybe I should have some isolated time by myself and reflect about my work. Maybe I should go talk to my spiritual guide and see what I can do to be better. Right? We talked about the spiritual mentor. Have a spiritual mentor, very important. And then be on guard on my spiritual life, right? What does the Bible say? This is a very important verse. It says, for what profit is it to a man if he gains the whole world and loses his own soul? Or what will a man give in exchange for his soul? Right? What's the point if I serve, if I do so many things, if I start so many services in the church, if I do this, if I do that, if I, do the wonders and become Superman, but at the end I lose my own soul? Who cares? What did I gain? Nothing, right? So be on guard in your spiritual life. Don't let your guard down, because we're in continuous conflict with the devil. He's not going to let up. He's always going to fight you, and whenever he sees you working, he's going to try to beat you down. Okay? That's it. Thank you. No problem.
Okay guys, في حد محتاج الفاذر اوف confession approval form ولا all of you خلاص done؟
I'm not yet.
Who said مجدلين؟ حد تاني؟ father of confession approval form. Okay, so next week is the last lesson in the first module. Okay, and then November 1st is going to be no class. November 8th is going to be the exam.